Good morning. This is Gaming Perspectives with
Saul
and Jolene. And today we're talking about
tension in RPGs.
tension and RPGs.
I think a lot of people think that tension comes in horror movies or horror genre RPGs,
or thrillers.
thrillers. But I think if you think about it, tension would be good in almost any RPG, no matter any genre, whether it's a action orientated game, even a hack and slash game. You want to add an element of tension, and it gives you more of an RPG element to your game, where people are thinking not in the sense of combat, but in the sense of thinking of what to do, of making the hard decisions, I guess. And I think tension, that's how you create tension.
So when I was looking this up, the idea, there was this one GM that put out the question. I think it was on Reddit. He says, in my games, we usually run into one problem per session, and there's, tension right up until the fighting starts.
Okay.
And then all the players just kind of relax and get into their simulation mode, right?
Uh-huh.
So it takes away the thrill of the game, right? For the GM. So he's asking, how do you keep the tension going even through a fight scene? Or how do you keep the tension up so that your players seem more engaged in the game than in just the simulation of the fight?
That's weird, because I would think there'd be a lot of tension in a fight, whether you make it or not.
Usually when Saul says roll initiative, the tension at the table just goes
Up,
notches up,
yeah,
right?
because
the excitement,
because they don't know which way the battle's going to go. At least that's one way of, at least in a battles heavy simulation type game, that's when the tension rises to the most, to the crescendo, right? Is because if you put it, I mean, I guess if it's just just another group of goblins and we'll just wait, you're 10th level, so you're just killing them left and right, and it's like swatting flies.
Yeah.
I guess there's no tension in that.
Yeah.
But if they run across something they don't understand, or they're not quite sure what it is, or whether they should fight it or not, I think that's where the tension rolls in a combat heavy game.
Yes, I agree. I thought it was an interesting dilemma for him.
Yeah.
Because I never.
It's the exact opposite for us.
Yeah.
Or for most people, I would think.
Yeah.
Yeah, unless there's, like I said, they're so powerful they don't
just
worry about
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah. No.
Oh, another red dragon?
Yeah, no problem.
I'll bring out my red dragon slayer right now. I was thinking, that's exactly what I was thinking, is that that tension is just not for horror movies or mystery genre games, that you could put them in action, in action adventures and any genre that you play, whether it's Lord of the Rings, whether it's a gumshoe system, investigative system, even horror. I mean, we were talking about how do you add tension to your game, or how do you achieve tension. One idea is to put the players on a time limit, or the characters even, or the adventures are kind of like on a time limit. You got 24 hours to save this person's life, or the poison kills them, like in a modern game.
Or some people put out an actual egg timer, right? You have 3 minutes to figure out what you're going to do.
I would absolutely hate that, but
Well,
yes.
that would totally raise the tension, right? Or a tick, one of the timers that ticks.
Yeah, tick, 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 tick.
That would totally drive me nuts.
Just the noise drives you nuts. But yes, like my mother-in-law who lives with us, she uses a timer for her when she does her laundry,
So she doesn't forget.
And she puts the timer like on this little wooden a TV tray, so it really ticks really loud. And so when she sets it, I cannot be in the room and like it be quiet, because it just drives me nuts. Like sometimes I'll sit down and I'll be reading a book or working on my game, because we're here in the living room, and that's where she puts the timer. And then sometimes it drowns out, but sometimes it just like the little ticking noise just goes straight into my brain. I'm like, I can't concentrate, right? Because it's just like, okay, I've just sat here 10 minutes and all I can think of is that damn timer. So I think putting an actual timer on the table, yeah, that would definitely raise the tension of the blood pressure of the players.
I know you've told the story before about the paranoia game at a convention where the guy brought out a pizza box that was ticking.
Yes.
And that kind of is
That
it a
was
bomb? Is it what's going on?
And then, yeah, it was funny because it's paranoia. If you don't know paranoia, we did this episode about it, so we won't go into it. But it's a very paranoid world. So, and it's a one where the characters don't have a lot of knowledge. They're like really, it's a really, what do you call it, draconian society, and so information is very limited. So when somebody goes, "Oh, is that a bomb?" and he goes, well, "How would you know what a bomb is? You must be a traitor." And so they summarily executed that guy. Don't worry, his clone came in and replaced him, so he was.
That's part of that game, yes.
He would play, but it was hilarious because he literally had a pizza box. It was wrapped up with twine, and there was a big old bulging thing in the middle, and
it was ticking.
You could hear it ticking.
Is that ticking?
It was funny.
So that would raise the
Yes.
tension level, right? But you don't even have to do that much. Some of the things that people ideas that other GMs gave this poor guy who couldn't figure it out was give your players a motivation, such as, like Saul said, the person's going to die in 24 hours. Or you could make it as simple as, if you don't figure this, you could hand them a note that says, if you don't figure out how to do this, such and such player is going to get killed in 15 minutes or something,
Right, and it could be false, right?
Right.
It could not be the truth. Or like players are going to say, well, how's he going to be killed? Does it say how he's going to kill him? No. That's even worse.
Yes, or
you get less information.
Or you could throw out a note, or someone tells one of the players, an NPC tells one of the players that someone in their midst is a traitor.
Oh yeah, there you go. So
motivations, right? Or
right.
weird things that come out in the game can ratchet up the tension.
Yeah, definitely. I think another classic one is having the characters / players make decisions, like big decisions, moral dilemmas, right? The one I've always talked about but this was not done by me, it was done to themselves as the players, was in my space opera game years ago. These two female players wanted this guy who was doing these terrible experiments on intelligent people or creatures or sentient beings. He was a real bad guy, and they just wanted him to admit that he was doing something wrong, and of course he wouldn't. And so they were like, man, this guy can't live, right? We can't take him to justice. We can't take him to, because he'd get away. And I was like, this guy's pretty well connected, and he was working for the government. So, well, are they going to make him a martyr, or is he going to get away with it, or is he too valuable to get rid of, right? And so they were that was the question. Do we take this guy in, or do we handle justice the way we see fit? And
your two players, they're both of those two are very moral compasses,
yeah.
and I don't think it was a choice for them.
No, but they really fought. They really fought to make that decision. I mean, it was that internal struggle, right? What to do or what not to do. And they just wanted him to admit it. And he was just like, nah, the best thing you could do is drop me off at the nearest spaceport and forget you ever met me. And they're like, no, we can't let you live if you could admit that you're not, didn't do anything wrong and all this stuff. And David was the pilot. He's like, what's going on back there? Because he knew what was going on, the player, but the character didn't. And they're like, nothing. There's nothing going on back here, right? And he goes, and then they open up the airlock and they put him in the
Why
airlock.
are you opening up the airlock?
And he goes, did I notice that? I go, yeah, I guess as a pilot you would have something on your instrument panel in the cockpit that tells you that the airlock open. He goes, what's in it? And he goes, do I have a camera? I go, sure. Yeah, he's in the airlock. And then he was piloting the ship, so he's like, why is he in the airlock? And they're like, none of your business. It is my business. He's he was very valuable, right? Yeah, he was part of the mission. So that was
not only a moral dilemma, but also to finish the mission and get paid, right? You had to take him back.
Well, they didn't. Well, see, the thing is that the people who were paying him to do the mission wouldn't know if he was alive or dead when they took him out. When they took care of the illegal cloning facility, they didn't have to say that we brought anybody out. In fact, I don't think they did, except he was the only one that lived. And so they could just, say, well, no, we never found anybody.
But literally, that was a moral dilemma for the characters, which made the tension rise in the game.
Right, and it was a slight time limit because they were going toward a spaceport, so they had to make a decision before they arrived, right?
I don't think it was a hard decision for them though.
so they ended up spacing them, and that was hilarious. So it was funny. It's still funny back then, now. Yeah, so putting them on a time limit and a moral dilemma. A moral dilemma as far as putting your characters in danger. If putting your character in danger, and like saving somebody's life, right? Like we were talking, you just mentioned a little while ago in Shannon's COC game that we played. There was an old man who was injured and he was not able to carry. He was out. He was knocked out, and my character had pretty much lost it. Said leave him behind, but other characters were like, no, we can't. So they were literally carrying his body around, trying to get away from this nasty ghost or whatever it was.
Well, because you don't leave people behind.
We're not the
Hello.
Marines. We're not the Marines. We're not. We weren't soldiers.
Saul's character was pretty low on sanity there.
Yeah, it was, and he just kept slipping more and more. But it was funny because like you guys carried that guy all over the place. I don't think you never left him behind.
I didn't actually carry him, but because I couldn't. But
Oh,
I was hurting the women.
The other two male characters were carrying this guy. Well, I didn't. I just ran away, and so I think I made it though, huh?
But see that the whole game, Shannon always says, you have to have, what's your reason for being here? You need connections to the other players,
right?
To give you that tension and dilemmas of moral dilemmas, like one of the characters was my brother, the other character was Saul's brother, and then the other two characters were attached because one of them liked the other one, right? So
Yes.
so in the my brother and the guy that liked me, both when the big giant bad guy was trying to eat my brains,
Yes, that's right.
they both stepped into the fray to try to keep it from happening, right? But in that game, and I read about Call of Cthulhu, and Shannon made sure that I knew, are you okay with dying, Jolene? And I'm like, yeah, it's just a game, right? I'm okay with it. And so it was you can see how the moral dilemmas, and in the end, they did have to leave the guy on the ground, the old man.
Oh, I don't remember. I think it was a very interesting game, and I think that was and that is, it is a horror game, so it works. But one of the reasons tension does ratchet up is because of those decisions that we make, and Shannon did those connections on purpose.
Yes.
Because Morgan in the past, when he had no connections, he would easily just run away and save his own butt without second thoughts, right? And so
and Morgan had played that particular scenario before, so he was even, he gave him connections to give him
to
something,
make sure that he wouldn't run away,
because he already knew what was going to happen one way or the other, right?
Well, I mean, just playing a character. So I think in that sense, that's a way you have tension, is when you have to make decisions that affect people supposedly in your background that you care for or that you like. And in this case, we were all connected one way or another, and so leaving somebody behind was a tough decision. And and so you would
even as people were slipping insanity left and right,
and you would use that information to help you role play that tension. And it was very tense, because like at one point you said something about separating the group. We separated because we wanted to investigate the spooky old house, because we wanted more information and we needed more information. And I think, and you guys were worried that we wouldn't make it, and we were worried we weren't gonna make it. So we were walking around this spooky house and weird things are happening, and that was perfect. I mean, I think Shannon has run COC games for a long time. He knows how to run a good mystery game, a good horror game, and and he was pretty good at making tension rise. And there was hardly any combat in that game.
How do you fight anything in that game, dude?
With a shotgun. I told you it was a shotgun. So again, if you have connections, backgrounds to each other, you're less likely to abandon them, willy-nilly, like Morgan usually did in his characters. So when you have connections to each other, and then they fall injured, they fall to injury, or there's a chance that they're facing something terrible, you as your character and the player, are you going to step up and save that person, even though your chances aren't very good, right? And you really might die. I mean, in D&D, depending on how many hit points you have left, and the monster, you know, going into battle is not a big deal. But in the COC where you have 12 hit points and the monster's like dishing out 8 on a bad hit.
Well, I have found in D&D and Pathfinder that if you separate yourself and walk into the battle, usually your compadres will follow you, especially if they don't want you to die. Or you get separated, or somebody's, usually they'll run to wherever you are, or you'll try to get to save somebody, right? Even just a murder hobo band want to keep each other alive, right? So that does how bad is the bad guy? D&D, like you don't know what kind of spell is that? Is that there's a magic user, you just can't see him, so you got to find the magic user because he's the one that is going to kill your party, right?
Yeah.
So there's those kind of tensions.
Well, situational ones,
yeah.
Right? Yeah, you put the characters in a situation where, I would think that any combat situation is tense, unless it's just going to be like a filler one. I mean, I wouldn't even know why have a combat, right?
Right.
If victory is assured, I mean, there's no tension in something like that, and that's where the problem lies, is where the players are so powerful that they can just literally wade into any situation that deals with combat and win. So, but I think we learned a valuable lesson that we are not all that powerful. We are, but we're not all powerful that we can just ignore or do anything without worrying about getting hurt.
Well, that's one of the things that makes the tension higher is
Right.
knowing that there's consequences to your actions, right?
Yeah.
Because I might know that if I walk over and throw a spell, I'm going to be vulnerable to being hit, and I always know that, and I never have as many hit points as other people. But even when I was playing a gnome fighter, I didn't have as many hit points as other people, and you still have to do it, right? And but that's part of the tension, is not knowing whether you're going to make it or not. Or hoping that when you do sit down on the battlefield, because you have 3 hit points left and you're pretty sure that your character would sit down when that happens, that, someone might come and save you, or you might be able to walk away in the next round instead of, and they'll understand why you're not shooting your arrows then, right?
Right. Yes. And I think that playing a character who, because some people play, I'm going to keep fighting, I only have 3 hit points left, I don't care, because they know the chances. They do that math in their head, right? Well, I get 3 chances of death saves, or whatever they call them, and my chances are pretty good. I have a blah blah blah, and then Mitch over there, he's a cleric, and he's almost done killing that thing, and he could heal me within 2 rounds possibly. So there's that stuff, and so that kind of stuff goes into effect. But let's say Mitch is pretty much busy with whatever he's fighting, and the cleric may not get to you, and so you're like, well, I only have 3 hit points, and I'm not fighting anything right now. Maybe I should take a defensive position.
Yes.
And there's tension in that. Making tough decisions, I think, is what I'm talking about. I mean, that is where tension is, like that with the women that we were playing with. I was playing space opera with. They were trying to make a tough decision. And there's a tension in that. We were making tough decisions as to whether, it was tough for me or it wasn't tough for me, whether to carry the old man. And I kept pleading with these guys. The guy's only going to slow you down. And this thing, that's what it was. It was a chase scene, right?
Yes, it was a chase scene.
And so the old man is like slowing everybody down. And I'm like, forget you guys. I'm going to go ahead. And so I went ahead and left them behind. And they were adamant that they wanted to help rescue this old man. And his wife, who was pleading for them not to just leave him behind, even though he had been passed out for a long time. And I don't think they made it, did they? No, they didn't make it. Well, it was funny because I was like, actually, my character after a while goes, yeah, you should take him, right? Because then because this monster would basically start eating your brain or something like that. And so we go, we just just drop him off when he's getting close, this monster getting close, just leave him behind, and that'll tide over the
Every
monster.
time he said something like that, I lost sanity points. I'm just telling you right now.
Oh, that was another problem. When I would say sensible things like that,
They weren't sensible.
Shannon would say, "Okay, everybody who heard that, make a sanity because that's a really horrible
I was
thing
losing
to say."
sanity points left and right. Saul was just like, "We should kill him," and I'm like, "Yo, roll a sanity check. There go 3 more points." And
Oh my god, it was funny. So that was classic tension, right? You're being chased. You have an old lady who can't run that fast. You have an old man who's passed out. Do you carry him? Yes, we're gonna carry him. Okay, it's moving faster than you guys are moving right now. Now I was like gone, right? I'm running ahead, and so that was really neat. I mean, that was really neat as far as the people who were behind me were really they really were like worried about this thing catching up to them, and I think at a certain point they did. It caught up to you, right? Of all people, for some reason, I don't know why you were behind.
I was trying to herd the one that was insane already.
Oh, that's right. You were, and then we had one that was completely bonkers, and Jolene felt that she had to take care of her, and at one point she didn't want to go anymore, or I don't know what happened, and so Jolene decides to try to go and get her, and she gets snarled by the monster herself, and then Morgan, who was infatuated with Jolene's character, decides he's gonna go save her, and of course her brother, played by Bay, go back and save her, and then they're like fighting this monster. They couldn't win, and but they actually rescued you, and left behind.
Didn't matter.
Well, you lived.
Yeah, I lived in an insane asylum, but I lived
for the rest of your life. I think tension. We talked. We wanted to talk about memorable games.
We haven't talked about that yet.
We haven't talked about that yet. So, but that's what exciting moments like that is what role playing games are
all about.
I think we're talking about this, and that happened 3 weeks ago. I'm sure we can talk about that for the rest of our lives. 20 years from now, we'll talk about that.
Well,
game.
there's the one that you always tell is when Alan and I went through the dimension door, and
yes.
we're split from the party, and he was trying not to die, and I was pretty much down to my last couple of hit points. So I was just sitting there, and what are you doing? I'm not doing anything.
I'm trying to make peace with myself.
And then all of a sudden, all of the fighters and magic users and people on the other side of this worm and this shaman, all of a sudden they pick up their pace and
you go into the battle frenzy.
Yes, and you can see it, and it makes it not only memorable, but it makes it it totally raises the tension when things like that happen.
Well, yeah. Well, look at that game that I ran Space Opera with Annette, and Steve and all those people, and David. I don't think Steve was playing, and Kathy. That was the mid '90s, and I still remember that scene.
Yeah.
And it was one of the best scenes that I can remember. It was classic for me. It's very memorable. So,
and he has a lot of memories of games, and they talk about them all the time.
So I think tension is a great way of adding an element to your game that makes it more real. That gives it a realistic feeling of what it is for those characters to be in those positions. And they got to make those kind of decisions that people have to make sometimes. Not in real life. People make life in different. Is it like a cop or a firefighter?
Yeah.
Does he run into that building to save the person? Usually they do. Those crazy bastards. But that's what we're talking about. We're talking about putting your characters in that position, and then players themselves have to make those decisions for their characters, whether they're going to risk their character's life or do they take the easy road.
Some other ideas for just raising the tension if your players are just sitting there and not really engaged in the game.
Okay.
Some of these DMs said, just roll the dice randomly, smile to yourself, just write anything on a piece of paper. This might grab their attention. Make a chuckle when they say something. Just little things that they don't know what you're doing.
That's terrible.
Describe the atmosphere around them.
Go into more detail.
Yeah, more details.
They're like, okay, usually
you walk into a tavern.
No,
there's not very much detail there. But if you're walking into a tavern and all the people inside look at you sideways or something.
Or to just put more details, and then your players are gonna pick up on that. I mean, trust me, they will. And they're like, well, why is the GM all of a sudden telling us about every single character or an NPC in this room, or how the bartender, doesn't wash his glasses. He just kind of rinses them out and puts them back on the thing, And he looks super clean. Why does he look super clean? Like he just took a shower or took a bath. And then players are gonna naturally go like, what's wrong with this guy? Why is he so different? Why is the GM giving?
Why is he telling me this?
So and that's what you want. You want characters, true, but the players to not know exactly what's going on or think there's something going on. Right? That's even better. Whether there's something going on or not, but they're like, whoa, what's going on here? I mean, this is odd, and so that in itself perks up the players if that's what you're trying to achieve. And two, it's that movie element where whether it's the sound of the soundtrack or the sound effects that raise that eyebrow, and you're like, okay, well, you have that shifty eye going back and forth. Your players thinking what's gonna happen next, and so that anticipation of whether something's gonna happen or not is tension, right? Is getting the players excited about what's going on in a certain scene. And I think that's what you're looking for. And I think tension is a very big part of role-playing games. Sometimes it doesn't seem like it is, but it definitely is. I mean, every combat should be tense. There's no doubt about it. There should be no throwaway combat scenes, or else there shouldn't be no combat scene. Because if the characters or the players are not worried about any consequences, then it's okay. Yeah, you take care of them. Let's move on. Instead of just rolling dice for half an hour and then, oh yeah, that was a great fight, guys. Because you get too experienced. Move on.
Well, another way to do it, I think, is to you always do this. Instead of giving players time to decide what they're going to do, like as a group, Salo will go, and I know I do it too. What are you going to do? And then you're next. Think about it, right? And then the people are like going, okay, what am I going to do, right? And then he doesn't give you time to. You just have to do something.
Well, I do that because
I'm going to stare at everybody else until they say what they're going to do.
Well, because sometimes players and GMs allow them to fall in this pattern of where they do all this planning before the battle.
Analysis paralysis.
Yes, and or just too much planning, right? They're like, oh, and so much planning or so much dialogue is happening that it's not realistic. Like you wouldn't have this dialogue before a battle, especially if the bad guy's like really close or something like that, or
unless it's a game happening. Like Shadowrun, where you literally have to plan out your attacks.
Well, run. Yeah.
You're taking 3 days to get stuff prepared and stuff like that. Then he allows all the planning to go on because then people are like different. Yeah, you're in different places and figuring.
Yeah, that's true. Shadowrun is a planning game in a certain sense, but once the action starts,
yes.
We don't pause and replan everything.
Everybody doesn't stop and everybody walks into this little bubble and go, oh, that didn't work. Let's see. Can I do that?
That's not working, so let's do this.
Yeah.
And then you're going to do this. No, we're just going to keep going. And you have to deal with the situation. If your plans change, then the plans change and you have to react, not plan again.
And it also helps to keep the story moving. And not only that, but to help the players not to go, oh, I didn't want to do that. Right? If you're asking them what they're doing right then they have to decide what they're doing right then.
Right. There's no take backsies.
Yeah.
Oh, that's not what I meant to do. I should have done this.
Oh, I go, well, man, I shouldn't have done that.
Well, that's what happens when you're in combat or you're, under the gun.
Yes.
You do things that you don't normally would do, or you do things rashly, right? That's the whole point.
And this could backfire on you, right? If you say you walk into a tavern and somebody takes the first person hostage and has a knife to their neck, you're with a bunch of crazy people and you don't know what they're going to do, right? What are you going to do?
That's true.
I pull out my...
Well, yeah, right. And in that sense, a GM should be cognizant of that. Something weird happening.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, there's you're the GM and you just got to be able to...
You better be on your toes if you're going to do something like that. That could raise the tension for everybody in the room.
Yeah, I guess you're right. I guess the person who deals most with the tension is the GM. And as difficult as that can be, dealing with things that you don't normally or hadn't thought of. The rewards
Make it an exciting
make it
game.
an exciting game and make it a memorable game is what you want. So I remember things that happened 30 years ago.
Yes,
Plus,
and he recounts them to me
not all the time.
quite often.
Well, stop.
So those are just some ideas on how to do the tension. I really like the idea, and we've never done it, the timer at the table, but one of these days we might do that, and just to see how it goes. Although that might totally freak out some people just a little bit too much.
Yes.
You want to have a balance. You don't want you want the characters to have tension, which means the players have tension, but you don't want them to be like, where they start to get a tick or something. They're like, I can't handle this.
You don't have a panic attack at the table.
I'm just saying that because, like, there was this game we played, and it wasn't a role-playing game. It was that game with where you couldn't talk to each other, and you could only make gestures.
Oh, my God, it was hilarious.
And it was just horrible. Poor Steve couldn't handle it. He goes, don't ever make me play that game again.
It was funny. It was weird. It was weird because, like, when I walked, I wasn't playing. I was out doing something, and I came to the game. This was at a convention, and I come into the room, and you had 4 players. I think it was Augustine.
We had like 6 players.
Oh, you had the guy. I don't know. I didn't know who he was, but the most obvious thing was Steve. He was like, he was like,
his hands were shaking.
He was super concentrating on something, right? Like and to that point where he was like, his the veins on his side of his head were like bulging, and he was like literally red, and then he's thinking, and as he's thinking, he has his hands up, and his hand is like shaking, and I'm like what's going on? And and then Augustine explained the game to me. I'm like, oh, he can't talk. And no, so it's kind of like this cooperative game where you're trying to tell the person go this way, go that way, and then you get to do something, and then they get to do something, and it was not very fun for some of the people at this.
So you don't want the tension level to be quite that high. I'm thinking
you don't want to have people have a coronary or a blood.
Keep your players safe.
Burst a blood vessel.
Yes. Give them moral dilemmas, fighting dilemmas. Make the bad guys good.
Don't give them nervous breakdowns.
Don't give them yeah, exactly. There you go. Good luck. This is Gaming Perspectives with
Saul
and Jolene.
You have a good day.